Hello everyone. Today we would like to bring you a discussion about the electoral bonds issue posted by none other than one of the senior most lawyers in our country, Mr. Sibal. You will be watching Mr. Sibal discussing with three eminent personalities about this important judgment which was recently delivered by the Supreme Court. To give you a short background, a writ petition was filed by a prominent NGO working in the area of constitutional issues, namely Association for Democratic Reforms, and a national political party, CPIM, that is Communist Party of India, Marxist. The writ petition was admitted in the year 2017. Thereafter, many hearings took place in the Supreme Court. Though prayers were made to stay the electoral bonds scheme, but the court was not inclined. Finally, the matter was referred to a constitution bench consisting of Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud and Justices Sanjeev Khanna, B.R. Gawai, J.B. Pardewala and Manoj Mishra. The primary legal challenge in the petition was against the introduction of electoral bonds, challenge to the Finance Act of 2017 and through it the amendments brought to Representation of People's Act, IT Act, Companies Act and the RBI Act. According to the petitioners, the entire anonymous electoral bonds scheme was violative of the right to information, which is a facet of Article 19(1) of the Constitution. As per the scheme, the corporates could secretly fund the political parties. The judgment in the matter was delivered earlier this month. The main judgment was delivered by CJI D.Y. Chandrachud, and Justice Khanna, who is the second senior most judge in the Supreme Court, delivered another judgment agreeing with the Chief Justice. The court held that the entire electoral bonds scheme was against the Constitution and directed the issuing bank to stop the issuance of electoral bonds. SBI has been asked to provide the Election Commission of India with information about the electoral bonds purchased since April 2019. Also, Justice Khanna in his judgment has given the names of political parties and the amount received by them. At para 68 of the judgment, you get the details of the contribution. From this, you can see that the maximum amount was received by the Bharatiya Janata Party to the tune of 6,500 crores, followed by the Indian National Congress, which received an amount of about 1,100 crores over the last years. You can visit LiveLaw.in to read the full judgment. So this is the overall context of the judgment on electoral bonds. We are mentioning these background facts for the better understanding of the discussion. This video is hosted by Mr. Sibal, and LiveLaw takes this opportunity to thank him. Over to the video.
On the 15th of February, just a few days ago, the Supreme Court of India rendered what some believe is a historic judgment, which declared the electoral bonds scheme for the purposes of funding the election as unconstitutional, violative of Article 19(1)(a) and Article 14 of the Constitution of India. In this episode of Dil Se, we have brought before you three stalwarts who will have a conversation with us on what the implications of this judgment are, what it means to the polity of this country. We'll start with Justice Lokur, who has been the Chief Justice of the High Courts, a couple of High Courts in this country, Judge of the Supreme Court of India. We have the Chief Election Commissioner, S.Y.Quraishi Saab, with us, who has been Chief Election Commissioner for 2 years, but was an Election Commissioner for 6 long years, perhaps longer than any other Election Commissioner. And we have the inimitable Dr. Swamy, who has been a Member of Parliament, who's been a Minister, and who is perceived by some as a troublemaker, but you cannot ignore him. In any political scenario, you cannot possibly ignore him. So let's start with the discussion. And let me start with you, Justice Lokur. What do you think of this judgment?
Well, it is a very important judgment, there's no doubt about it. Historic, as some people say. But my real concern is the actual implementation of the directions given by the Supreme Court. What is it that will happen after 15th of February? That is my concern. But otherwise, I think it's a great judgment and must be welcomed by everybody.
My worry, if I may say so, is that it may be a great judgment in the context of the declaration of the law. But the problem is that by this time, the BJP has amassed 6,566 crores through this electoral bond scheme. By striking down the scheme, there will be no more electoral bonds, but we've already created a non-level playing field because the BJP has 6,566 crores and the opposition will not be able to raise any more money. So it is already resulted in a non-level playing field in the democratic system of this country. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it would have been appropriate if the case had been heard several years ago, right? The Supreme Court had said on more than one occasion that the questions raised in the petitions that have been filed are of considerable importance. And the fact that a constitution bench was set up is an indication that the case was of importance. Now, if it is an important case involving a constitutional point or several constitutional points, it should have been heard a couple of years earlier. And, if it had been heard in 2019, for example, no political party would have got the kind of money that they have today.
Exactly.
So I think the delay has, in a sense, made the whole exercise academic.
Yes, that's the point I was coming to.
Yeah.
Quraishi, what are your thoughts on that?
Kapil, I would like to take you back to the budget speech of the then Finance Minister in 2017.
Yes.
He started with a very interesting statement, and which is very crucial to this debate. He said, without the transparency of political funding, free and fair elections are not possible.
That's correct.
That was music to our ears because that's what we have been saying. His second sentence was equally good, that for the last 70 years we have failed to do that. So naturally our expectation was the third sentence will say, I'm going to introduce transparency this way. And what he said in the third sentence was just the opposite.
Yes.
And whatever transparency then existed was taken away. And I would like to remind you what was the transparency then. Every donation of 20,000 rupees only was to be reported to the Election Commission.
Right.
Election Commission will certify, on that basis only income tax relief will come.
Correct.
Now 2 crore, 200 crore, 2,000 crore will be kept secret.
That's right.
And the reason given was very, very phony. They said that donor wants secrecy because they are afraid of reprisal. Now, why do I call it phony? Number one, donors have been donating for the 70 years.
That's correct.
Did you come across any reprisal by any party against any donor? Secondly, those same donors were donating to all the rival parties that were contesting the same election.
Right.
So it didn't matter who won and who lost because they were always there. So to say that they are scared. Finally, why are they scared? If they really wanted secrecy, because they have something to hide. The quid pro quo, the licenses, the contract, and the bank loans with which they all run away. We know how many of them are abroad now.
Absolutely.
So they're basically to hide that.
That's right.
Now that was legitimized and legalized.
So therefore, non-transparency was legitimized and legalized according to
And in the name of transparency, by the way.
Transparency.
Yes.
So it was the most opaque scheme, according to me, in the history of this country.
Absolutely.
Swamy Sahib?
Well, it was clearly something that not only Arun Jaitley but Modi wanted it. Because the then governor of Reserve Bank was vehemently against it.
Yes.
And he lost his job.
Yes.
The income tax people also opposed it.
Yes.
And what's happening in the, if you look at the amounts collected, there's a huge difference between what the BJP has got and what the others have got. Because the fact is that when others get it, the government of India would anyway come to know.
Yes.
And then they can use their methods. So it's a way of basically the level playing field has disappeared.
Yeah.
With this.
Even today.
And more so today.
More so today. Now, I just tell you a very interesting point you raised, and I request you to interject and intervene because it's a discussion. We are having a conversation. But apropos what you said, in 2017-18, before the scheme came into operation, BJP got 210 crores. In 2018-19, it jumped to 1,450 crores. In 2019-20, at the time of the election, Lok Sabha election, 2,555 crores, as opposed to 317 crores for Congress. In 2020, 21, not many elections took place, so hardly any money came. In 21-22, 1,033. This goes on. In 22-23, 1,294, making a total of 6,566 crores. Now, that's how it moved on. All non-transparent. And as you rightly said, the finance, the RBI objected, the Election Commission of India objected. And the RBI said, and I'll read it, it says the amendment would enable multiple non-sovereign entities to issue bearer bonds. The proposal militated against RBI's sole authority to issue bearer instruments. It said, though the identity of the person or entity purchasing the bearer bond will be known because of know your customer requirement, the identities of the intervening persons, entities will not be known. Why? Because if A buys a bearer bond, he can transfer it to B. Now, B can pay the entire amount in cash to him and carry the bearer bond. So you can convert your black money into white, right? This was all before the government. This was all before the finance minister. Why did they not listen to this? And then it says the intention of introducing electoral bonds can be accomplished by check, demand draft, electronic and digital payments. Why did that not happen? Exactly what you're saying. And then the Election Commission of India, I mean, there are lots of other things they said, but I won't, read about all that. Then the Election Commission of India says that, look, this is not something that you should, the Election Commission was fully opposed to it, saying you can't have opaqueness. You can't hide the name of the person because, as you said, beyond 20,000, even now when I contribute, I'll have to give the name. So despite the opposition, as Swamiji said, from the RBI, from the Election Commission of India, they still. Why? Because there must have been a reason behind it. They wanted to control through this money, the whole electoral process in this country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, Election Commission of India itself wrote to the government, very strongly worded letter. Yes. It's not that they were asked for their opinion, they themselves wrote a letter of protest.
They said unlimited corporate funding would increase the use of black money. That's what they said, for political funding through shell companies.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was before the finance minister.
Yeah, also, the quid pro quo that you have mentioned.
Yeah. That's the Supreme Court also mentioned.
Yeah, Supreme Court also says so. So that is also there,
Sorry, you would
no. See, if the voters have a right to know,
yes,
then in this particular case, the article
19-1A, right to information.
Yes, it's violated.
Yes, that's what the Supreme Court has also held.
On the face of it.
Yeah, the Supreme Court has held exactly that, rightly so. But let's go on to the next topic. So that challenge is not being heard, along with the other challenge that many of these acts are passed as money bills, and those challenges are not being heard by the Supreme Court. So let's come to another issue. Should the Supreme Court not be hearing these matters immediately when they are challenged? And why did the Supreme Court not hear it?
In fact, that is my gravest concern. And I've been thinking of writing about it, but then I remind myself of the contempt of court power. But, I've written again and again for the last 20 years that Supreme Court is the guardian angel of our democracy and also of the Election Commission, but not in the last 7 years. Now, take this case only. Mr. Jaitley himself said that without transparency of political funding, free and fair elections are not possible. Now, free and fair elections have been repeatedly mentioned as the basic structure of the Constitution. Here, the basic structure of the constitution is affected. Election after elections are happening in such a situation, and Supreme Court doesn't find it an issue of national importance. It is putting it on the back burner. They have to account for it. They have to answer also. And in fact, I have had the audacity to write in yesterday's in the Indian Express column the last thing, that my faith in the Supreme Court was wavering. It has now been revived, and I hope it will continue to do so.
It may have been revived, but what about the non-level playing field that exists today?
Exactly.
That's a problem. That's a very serious problem.
Yeah.
So why should this money not be returned?
I think it'll be impossible to find out, who has given how much.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. This much is clear, that this money came to a particular party,
Yeah.
or other parties as well, whoever got it. Because other parties also.
But the order said that the last tranche, which is still under transaction, will be returned.
No. That
Only
is
the
for
last-
the last
No,
15 days.
That's if it's not been in cash.
If it has not been in cash.
But then what happens if a political party says that, listen, we've already spent the money?
No, but it's like this. If I get take income tax law. If I get something illegally, I have to account for it and return it. This is an illegal transaction.
No,
Under
right,
the law.
right. But okay, they'll say we spent it and this is where we spent
they
it.
have got offices. They have got offices,
yeah.
right? These offices have value, right? These offices doesn't under the PMLA. Aren't offices attached nowadays?
Yeah, but then are you suggesting that the offices get demolished?
Not demolished. They should be attached and sold. And the money recovered.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm only saying
Yeah.
that it should not be that the consequence of this judgment is that nothing happens after this,
Yeah.
and you continue with a non-level playing field, and others cannot compete.
Yeah, if you permit me, I would rather say don't go into the past. Whatever has happened very bad. But let us think of the way forward.
Yeah.
And there are things which they should be discussing, which they are not. But there are alternatives. Political funding is essential for democracy.
No, we'll come to that later, what the solution is. What I'm saying at the moment is, when you say, let's forget the past, but the past has created the non-level playing field. How do you forget
Yeah,
it?
you can't forget the past. I mean, when you have one political party getting thousands of crores, and
But you can't undo it.
No, why can't you?
No, because you can recover, as we said, you
Why
can't
can't you
recover.
undo it? It's an illegal transaction. You've received illegal money through an illegal law, and you say, I can't do anything about it. In any other situation, they would pass an ordinance and say, return the money. But of course, this
But
government will
in the
not do it.
TV debates for the last couple of days, what I've been hearing, people saying that a criminal law cannot be with the retrospective effect.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It's not criminal law. It's
So-
not criminal. It's an illegal transaction in the eye of law. In other words, you could not have had a scheme. You could not have had such a scheme. Forget about quid pro quo. We'll come to that later. But that makes it a corrupt act. So these are two separate issues. It's an illegal transaction. If there's an illegal transaction, what's the consequence of an illegal transaction under the Contract Act, for example?
yeah, well, you have to come back to status quo ante.
Absolutely. Disgorgement.
Yeah.
If the transaction is illegal,
disgorgement,
the
yeah.
consequence is disgorgement. If it applies to ordinary contract law, why doesn't it apply to this? It's a very serious issue,
Yes.
right? So if you say forget the past, you are saying, okay, the misdemeanors of the
Yeah,
past.
instead of wasting time on recovering, let us.
No, I'm not saying wasting time or recovering.
Yeah.
I'm saying create a level. You say it's a basic structure of the Constitution, no?
Yeah.
So create a level playing field.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it, look at the other consequence. Originally, under the law as it stood, you could contribute 7.5%, okay, of your net profit for average of 3 years for contributions, right? Only when a company is making profit and it's been in operation for 3 years. All that was amended. And now you could contribute any amount, and even a loss-making company could contribute, right? What was the intent of that, according to you?
That was the biggest disaster.
No, it was with the malified intent,
Yes, absolutely.
which means a loss-making company will obviously want favors from the government. It will contribute all the money.
No, this is what is legitimization of crony capitalism.
Exactly.
Was the issue of disgorgement argued before the Supreme Court?
No, we argued that the scheme was bad. It is for the Supreme Court to decide as to what should be done thereafter. I mean, we of course said that the money should be returned. But of course, we knew that the problem with that is that the players are not parties. BJP is not a party, Congress is not a party. How can you ask them to disgorge without making them parties? There are issues of hearing those who are affected. So I knew that this is not something that's going to happen. But now that the transaction is illegal, then steps should be taken. But who will take those steps? I mean, your party certainly will not.
No, not at all. But I mean, the presently situation, the party is structured in such a way that everything is based on nomination. Previously, when Johnson was there, and then Janata Party, and then BJP till Modi came, there used to be regular 2-year elections in the party.
But that's a separate issue. I mean,
but that's what made the party to ask these questions of the leadership. The strength was there. But today it is nobody stands up. Just nobody stands up.
Now let's go back to the question that Yaqub Bhai mentioned, that how should this be dealt with in the future?
Yeah, well, I think that's a difficult question, but he has some solutions. Yaqub Bhai has some solutions. I think if, in the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Ambedkar and Dr. Rajendra Prasad both said that we need persons of character and integrity, right? Now, if you say that, black money comes to the political parties, it's the political parties which are receiving the black money. Can they not show some character and integrity and say that, listen, we are not going to accept black money. We are going to accept money only by check. If you want to give us 1 crore by check, give it, So it's really dependent entirely upon the character and integrity of the political parties. They should say that we do not want corruption in elections. We do not want black money in elections. I think it's a difficult solution, but I suppose that's a straightforward solution.
If I may tell you an interesting actual anecdote, when Aam Aadmi Party got going, they started this practice of transparent political funding, income, expenditure, everything was on the website. I loved it and I praised it all over the world whenever I was traveling. And they got invitation to explain this scheme because the money is a problem in many countries. So one day I used to tweet also, okay, Delhi, somebody says, okay, sir, what are you talking about? They've removed it from the website. So I called up a very important leader, very, very senior important leader. Look, I am praising your scheme worldwide and here you have removed it from the website. His reply shocked me. He says, sir, every donor of ours has been raided. How can we risk these donors? So we had no choice but to remove it. So,
but then the quality of politicians has to go up by the society, making that as a desirable activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today everybody thinks you are nuts if you go to politics.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
But on your question of political parties, saying that we will not accept any cash, the problem doesn't lie only with the political parties. Take, for example, that I am a candidate from anywhere in India. The limit I have for a member of parliament election is 95 lakhs. My constituency is, 50 kilometers, right? And I have to serve so many constituents. There's no way in the world that I can fund this election with 95 lakhs. So even if the party were to say that we will not accept illegitimate funding, the candidate will. The candidate will, because the candidate will not be able to fight the election within the limit of 95 lakhs. And the MLA will not be able to fund the election with the limit of 45 lakhs. 45 lakhs in the context of the kind of meetings that you need to organize is just nothing. So this is a real problem.
Quite right. But as the Election Commission, we have been confronted with this question many times, that this should be rationalized. My question was, what is a rational limit? Nobody had the answer because some people said even 95 lakhs is too much. The left parties, for instance, they will say we can do with half.
Correct.
The others will say even 2 crores, 5 crores is not enough. So we used to say, look, amongst yourself, you decide what is a rational limit, which can be fixed, which has been changed from time to time, which
Yes.
can be changed. So, but the bigger problem of money power in the election is not the 95 lakhs that you spend in Lok Sabha, but there is no ceiling on political party expenditure. Party can spend 5 crores, 20 crores on you.
Correct.
That disturbs the level playing field.
Yeah.
And in UK, where we borrowed the system from, there is a cap on political party expenditure also. Now, if people are expressing concern, the government included, that too much of money, we should control it. I have a solution. Put a cap on party expenditure, 95 individual expenditure, equal expenditure from the party. It will come down from 60,000 crores to 6,000 crores. Think about it, talk about it.
Yeah, but then it might generate black money.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the point I was coming to.
Yeah.
I think maybe another solution, I'm trying to give one, is to get the corporates, or let there be a cess imposed
Yes,
on the corporate sector,
correct.
right, for the purposes of elections, right? That cess goes to the Election Commission of India, right? And let a minimum of, say, 7.5%, right, that you can impose 2%, 3% cess. So you get lots of money in the Election Commission of India. Then depending on the strength of the party in parliament and the strength of the party in the legislature, that money be distributed in equal measure to each candidate.
Exactly. Now that
That's a possibility. That's
yes,
a possibility.
quite right. That is now that you have come to the conclusion, the recommendation part. This is what I wrote in my article a couple of days ago. There are two things we can do. One, ban private donations altogether and let it be state funded, public funded. Your entire election is, and instead of you going after companies, twisting their arm, taking bribe, we give you a check with dignity sitting at home. This is one way. The other is don't fund election because black money problem will still continue. Fund political party, not the election, political party based on their actual performance. And actual performance cannot be fight. What I mean by that is, for every vote that you get, I give you 100 rupees. Now, in the last election, there were 67 crore votes were cast. So, multiplied by 100, 6,700 crores is what we have to give. Now, we don't even have to impose a cess. In 5 years, 6,700 crores is nothing, is peanut. From the budget, it can go. But if some people protest, why should my money be used by a politician? Well, cess can be one. Another alternative which I have suggested, which has been on the table for a long time and nobody talks about it, create a national election fund where these corporates will donate because they will get lots of income tax relief, 100% tax relief, on which basis, and from there the fear of reprisal goes away because they are, it is like donating to Prime Minister Relief Fund. So from there it is distributed as per your electoral performance, very objectively.
So the corporates can contribute.
Absolutely.
You need not have a cess,
Yes.
and that contribution can then be distributed pro rata amongst the political parties. That's again another possibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
But wasn't this electoral trust something of this
No,
nature?
electoral trust
Trust
is
is
a different
different.
thing.
It's a different
Because
thing.
companies form their own trust from where they fund. The threat of reprisal will still be there. If say Tata Trust gives to A party, so the B party will be angry. So the trust is a different issue. I'm talking of national fund, national electoral fund like.
No, I was under the impression that the electoral trust, which was something which was discussed,
Yes.
was something in this nature.
No, electoral trusts there are several 8, 10, 20 electoral trusts of different companies and basically to fund political parties. But the fear that if they give to some party,
that reprisal bit
that
will
way.
be there.
No,
Because
see,
neither election fund is the answer, and which is very doable.
There are three forms of funding. You can fund, the company can fund, the trust can fund, and individuals can fund.
Exactly.
Right? And the Supreme Court has discussed the trust issue as well in its judgment.
Yes.
And said that that's also bad. There's no transparency in that as well. The Supreme Court has rendered that. But, okay, so let's move on to a different subject now. Assuming this is bad, assuming, the money is not returned. Now, obviously there's a quid pro quo in this. Nobody gives, because the minimum you can give is 10,000, then 1 lakh, then 10 lakhs, then 1 crore. Beyond 1 crore, you cannot contribute. Right? So a lot of these companies would have contributed.
No, you can contribute. I mean, you can buy 10 bearer bonds.
No, that's right. I'm saying beyond one, you can't have a bearer bond for more than 1 crore. Right? So you can have 10 of them and give 10 crore or 50 of them. That's another matter. Point I'm making is that there is an element of quid pro quo. Even the court says there may be an element of quid pro quo. Shouldn't there be an investigation agency set up immediately?
No, the first thing is make it public. Let people see for themselves whether there was quid pro quo.
No, they may not. You see, you must understand, the person who gives the bearer bond, electoral bond, may not be the person who bought the electoral bond. You must appreciate that. I buy an electoral bond, and somebody buys it for me because it's transferable.
No, that's all right. But you see, when you buy it from the state bank, they will have that KYC.
Only the name of that person. Beyond that, nothing.
Yeah, that's fine. So he's the person who's giving it.
Correct. He may be a perfectly good person. I mean, the perfect point I'm making is the kickback and the what is it called, quid pro quo, may be happening with the person who has bought it from the purchaser.
Yeah, maybe.
That's the point I'm making.
Maybe that's a possibility.
Yes.
But I think what Yaqub Bhai is saying is that once you know who is the purchaser of the bond, okay, now supposing it's a company which has bought, say, 10 bonds for 10 crores.
Company may not buy, an individual may buy, and the company
unlikely, because,
or a company may do it.
Yeah. Let's assume that a company buys it. Okay, they buy 10 bearer bonds, electoral bonds. The State Bank of India knows who is the purchaser. They know that it has gone to a political party. And then, some investigative journalist or somebody can say that, well, this fellow got a contract or this company got a contract. So there's obviously, you can put 2 and 2 together and say that, well, there was this quid pro quo.
Yeah, but that takes a long period of time. I mean, the question is the party in power, if it has got 6,000 crores, more than 6,000 crores, I mean, first of all the agencies are under their control. Who is going to investigate all this? I mean, I think that the nature of these transactions is such, and the scheme is such, there should be an overarching investigating agency set up by the Supreme Court of India itself to see that this fund was not used for the purposes of a quid pro quo. I think we owe it to this nation. We owe it to our people.
Yeah. You see, that's why I'm sorry, I began by saying that the implementation is the problem. Yeah. Right now, you may have a company coming up and saying that, listen, we did it knowing that our identity will not be disclosed. Right? So a company files an application, you don't know what the courts are going to do. Yes. Implementation is going to be the problem.
What do you say?
Yeah, exactly. This is one question which has been coming up in the media, and I have no answer also. Justice Lokur also feels this will be an issue in the court, and we don't know what the court will decide.
No, but why should the court, considering that they have declared the whole thing to be illegal, why should the court not take upon itself the responsibility?
No, but the question is, if somebody goes to court that I donated because I was promised secrecy, now I'm being exposed.
No, that the Supreme Court has now set aside, saying secrecy can't be a defense. Supreme Court has said so.
Very good.
So that's not an issue anymore.
All right.
What I'm saying is, since that's not an issue, and secrecy can't be a defense if there's a possibility of a quid pro quo, possibility of a quid pro quo is there, Supreme Court says so in its judgment, why should the Supreme Court not set up an SIT or something like that?
One point I would like to mention, although one channel which was interviewing me and called my reply very weak, but I think we are coming to that, because somebody says that I donated because I was promised secrecy. But that donor is not a man in the street, is not an
Yes.
illiterate guy.
Yes.
He knows the court, the matter is in the Supreme Court,
Yes.
and it can go any which way.
Correct.
So therefore, for him to be totally innocent, look, I did not know what will happen. He should have known.
The other information that I have is that 90% of these bonds were for 1 crore each,
Yes.
Yes.
which means very rich people gave,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
right? So therefore, they must be knowing that as to why they are giving, and you know why they give. So that's, I think, what do you say, Dr. Swamy, to this suggestion? That of when SIT, the Supreme Court itself setting it up.
Yeah, but you see, there's a character problem we must now start addressing. You know, after all, if the politicians, there is no appreciation in this country for somebody becoming a politician. There's no encouragement also. And in fact, the discouragement is very strong. Now, when you have people like that who come from extremely poor backgrounds, and then suddenly they've got this capacity to become millionaires. I'm giving you an extreme example. Then all these things where you put in that you should have this kind of method of punishing somebody or the other, they'll all be in some way or the other some-touched. I think when you have that kind of, the kind of politicians we have today, I would say that my own personal experience is that most of them think that cheating is something that, there's nothing wrong with it.
It's passé.
Yeah, because they say that everybody is doing it. And,
Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? That's very sad. I mean, I think the political system is throwing up people who think that it is legitimate to do an illegitimate thing.
That's right.
Right? And they feel that the political system supports that illegitimacy, and they are not answerable to anybody.
Yeah.
And this, according to me, is the real problem of our politics today. That you don't have men of character anymore, very few of them at least,
Yeah.
right, who can stand up and say the right thing even in Parliament. This is a very sad state of affairs. Let me move on to yet another topic. Now, this political funding obviously is given by the corporate sector, these electoral bonds, given to the government. Now, that corporate sector almost owns 90% of the media in this country, right? And so there is an element of quid pro quo, and government advertisements are given by the parties who receive this funding to the corporate sector, to the media, which is controlled by the corporate sector. So in a sense, there is an element of quid pro quo there itself.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Right? An element of quid pro quo there itself. If that's the case, then it means, and that's the reason why the waters have been muddied, because the campaign of the government after receiving these bonds through the media to only ensure that one kind of narrative goes to the people of this country is perhaps the most dangerous thing that has happened in the last 10 years in this country. And I want you to just, give your thoughts on this subject, because I think that's the most serious issue affecting this nation today and democracy.
I think like a candidate, after the election, you are supposed to report your expenditure.
Yes.
Political parties are supposed to report their income, not the expenditure.
Yes.
They should be, by law or by regulation, by election commission, they should be forced to declare every bit of expenditure which they make. So if they have paid something to some media, which is owned by a company which donated, the company donated 10 crores, you gave 10 crore worth of advertisements to their media company, which is what you're saying. So this should be explained if it comes on record that this is how they spent the money. At the moment, I don't think there is any rule which asks them to explain what expenditure you made.
But that's the argument I made in court.
Correct.
I said,
secondly, legally, well, what is, for instance, expenditure ceiling? for the candidate. There is a logic for it because so that everybody can contest. It is not only contest among the rich. Now the same logic logically should extend to the political party. Not having a limit on them, not having any accounting for them is absolutely absurd. You can't have double standard.
Absolutely.
Rule for candidates, rule for parties, they're different.
All political parties will oppose your suggestion.
That's exactly that's exactly the point. That's exactly it.
That's where character comes. You see.
You
That's
know,
what I'm saying.
also, Election Commission has been demanding very simple demand that they should get their accounts audited by an independent auditor from a panel which Election Commission gives you, and of course we will get it from CAG or whosoever. But they appoint their accounts are audited by their card holders, whose job is only to whitewash.
That's true.
An independent auditor will expose them, and that will be put on the website. That is a simple demand.
There,
we
you
will
see,
make it.
this so-called independence, quote unquote, is absent in institutions altogether, even in auditors, I'm sorry to say. I don't mean any disrespect to any auditor, right? There is, no, I mean...
Well, yes,
this
of
is
course,
the point.
big firms have cheated.
This is the problem. When you talk about independence, who is independent in this context? Who is independent in this country? Perhaps the courts alone, right? To the extent they are independent.
Are they?
Who else is independent? No, I'm saying to the extent they are, right? But this is the serious issue when you talk about independence. Independence can only happen if you allow institutions to function in accordance with their responsibilities under the Constitution. And Justice Lokur, why don't you give your thoughts on this? This is a very serious issue.
You see, again, the question of reprisals comes in. Supposing or dissent, in a different form. Supposing an auditor gives a truthful report, that's the end. He will not get another audit. You have that problem.
No, I say, Justice Lokur, that is where I say that instead of the auditor of their choice, the auditor is given by an independent body like the Election Commission. Okay? Now, of course, he may be influenced also, but presumption is that he is an outsider, he is an independent, as different from a card-holding member of the party doing the audit.
These presumptions apply to every institution in this country. Yakub bhai. Right.
Well,
this is a problem. This is a problem. This is a serious problem. And I think, I think that politics must change in this country.
Oh yes, undoubtedly.
Undoubtedly. We are living in an era that if this continues, we will not remain what our forefathers thought we would be. That's the reality that we are faced with. Sad reality.
Right, that's the key point.
Yeah. How do we do that? How do good people stand up? How do good people come into politics? How do we find out that institutions are doing what they are doing consistent with their obligations under the Constitution? We just don't find that.
See, from my own personal experience, when I left my teaching profession and came, almost everybody thought I was nuts to go into politics. Although I came almost immediately, I came into parliament and so on and so forth. So I'm saying there is a definitely society, particularly middle class, which is the most important class for this kind of thing, where going to politics is funding. And therefore, that has to be, that's not so in many other countries. I think in the United States, I've seen my own eyes that people think going to politics is a good thing.
Yes, it is.
But that is not here today.
No.
You see, that is one thing. The other, which I have found, in fact, I had asked a large group of students, can you tell me who is your MLA? Right? They couldn't answer.
Yes,
Okay. Today, you ask anybody who's your municipal councillor in Delhi, they won't be able to tell you. So there is no contact between the citizen and the elected representative.
That's another very important point.
Absolutely.
But that led me to another debate or controversy, which may be a topic for some other day, the simultaneous election. I have been opposing simultaneous election because this phenomenon of not knowing your MLA will get aggravated. an MLA wins, for 5 years he's missing, and the people have to put up posters, Gumshuda ki talash, wanted. So because he never comes back. So at least repeated election brings him back for.
We'll postpone this debate for another day. But that's also a very serious issue. It's now been recommended.
Yeah.
It's been recommended now that you should have,
correct.
one nation, one election. Well, let's wait for that, and we will discuss that on another day. But thank you very, very much for. I think it's been a very interesting discussion on a subject that impacts the polity and the future of our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.